Most people think confidence is something you feel. It's not. Confidence is something you signal, and right now, without knowing it, you are broadcasting weakness in over 30 different ways every single day. The way you hesitate before you speak, the way you shrink when someone questions you, the way you apologize for taking up space in rooms you have every right to be in. Here's what nobody tells you. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest, it's the stillest. The one who doesn't flinch, the one who holds eye contact 2 seconds longer than feels comfortable, the one who moves like time belongs to them. That kind of confidence doesn't just attract people, it unsettles them. It makes them lean in and back away at the same time. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how to build it, not from the outside in, but from the ground up, from the neurological wiring that controls how every single person in your life perceives you from the moment you walk through a door. There is a man who walks into a room and immediately, without saying a single word, without announcing himself, without doing anything that should logically demand attention, every head turns. Not because he is the tallest, not because he is the loudest, not because he is wearing something that catches the eye. They turn because something in their nervous system registers him as significant. Something ancient and automatic inside every person in that room sends a quiet signal that says, "Pay attention to this one." That signal is not triggered by words. It is triggered by stillness. We live in a world that has confused motion with power. We have been conditioned to believe that the person who talks the most, moves the fastest, fills every silence, and never stops performing is the one who is in control. But watch what actually happens in rooms where real power exists. Watch a seasoned negotiator sit across the table from someone desperate to close a deal. Watch a special operations veteran walk into a crowded space. Watch a leader who has genuinely nothing to prove interact with people who are trying to impress him. You will notice something immediately. They are not doing much. And that lack of doing is precisely what makes them devastating. The human brain is a threat detection machine. It has been running that program for 200,000 years. And one of the core things it looks for when it is scanning a room, scanning a face, scanning a body, is unnecessary movement. Because in nature, unnecessary movement is a signal of anxiety. It is a signal of fear. The animal that cannot hold still is the animal that is afraid. And the animal that is afraid is not the one in control. Your nervous system knows this. Everyone else's nervous system knows this. And it is reading you constantly in every room you enter, before you open your mouth, before you shake a hand, before you introduce yourself to a single person. Think about what you do when you are nervous. Really think about it. You touch your face. You shift your weight from one foot to the other. You nod excessively when someone is speaking to make sure they know you are listening. You fill silences with sounds, because silence feels dangerous to you. You laugh a half second too early. You over-explain. You gesture with your hands more than the moment calls for. Every single one of those behaviors is a broadcast, a live transmission going out to every person around you that says, "I am not comfortable. I am not certain. I am not the apex of this interaction." And people receive that transmission, whether they are conscious of it or not. Now, understand what stillness actually communicates at that same neurological level. When you do not fidget, you are telling every nervous system in the room that you are not under threat. When you pause before you speak, instead of rushing to fill the air, you are communicating that your words are deliberate, that you are someone who chooses what comes out of their mouth, rather than someone who is desperate to be understood. When you hold your position physically, when you do not lean in to make someone like you, when you do not laugh to release the tension, when you simply remain, you become the reference point in the room. Every other person begins to unconsciously orient towards you, the way a compass needle finds north. This is not about being cold. It is not about being robotic or detached, or performing some hollow version of dominance that falls apart the second it is tested. The stillness that actually works, the kind that makes people feel it in their chest when you walk in, comes from something internal. It comes from a nervous system that has been trained to stay regulated under pressure. It comes from a person who has been in enough difficult moments, who has sat with enough discomfort, who has resisted the urge to escape often enough that stillness has become their natural state rather than something they are forcing. You cannot fake this at a deep level for very long. People feel the difference between someone performing calm and someone who actually is calm. One makes you look trained, the other makes you look. There is a difference between a person who is confident and a person who is playing confident, and the gap between those two things is wider than most people ever realize. You have felt it before, even if you never had the language for it. You have been in a conversation with someone who was saying all the right things, holding eye contact, smiling at the right moments, using the right tone, and something in you still did not buy it. Something underneath the surface of your awareness was quietly sending you a signal that said, "This is not real." That signal was not wrong. What you were detecting was performance. And performance, no matter how polished, no matter how practiced, never lands the same way as actual presence. The reason for this goes deeper than psychology. It goes into biology. The human nervous system has a detection mechanism that researchers sometimes call neuroception, a word coined by neuroscientist Stephen Porges to describe the way your body scans the environment for safety and threat completely beneath the level of conscious thought. You are not deciding to evaluate people. You are not running a checklist. Your nervous system is doing it automatically, constantly, and it is extraordinarily good at detecting incongruence. When what someone projects on the outside does not match what their body is actually doing on a physiological level, microtensions in the face, subtle asymmetries in movement, the almost imperceptible timing of their reactions, your nervous system catches it. It might not send the information to your conscious mind as a clear thought, but it sends it as a feeling, a vague discomfort, a sense that something is slightly off. And that feeling quietly erodes every impression the person is trying to build. This is the trap that most people fall into. When they decide they want to become more confident, they go looking for techniques. They study body language. They practice their handshake. They memorize opening lines. They work on their vocal tonality. And all of those things have their place. But when they are layered on top of an internal state that has not changed, they become costume. They become a very elaborate, very exhausting performance that requires constant maintenance and still does not produce the effect they are chasing. Because what they are trying to do is control the output without changing the source. And the source is always what people feel. Real presence is not something you project. It is something you stop blocking. Every human being has a natural gravitational pull when they are fully in their own body, fully committed to the moment they are in, fully unattached to how they are being perceived. Watch a child who is completely absorbed in something they love. There is no self-consciousness. There is no monitoring. There is no part of their attention split off and watching themselves from the outside to make sure they are coming across correctly. They are just there completely, and you cannot look away from them. That is presence in its purest form. And somewhere between childhood and adulthood, most people lose it entirely. Not because it was taken from them, but because they were taught that how others see them matters more than what they actually are. The moment you are more focused on managing your image than on engaging with reality, you have left the room. Your body is there. Your mouth is moving. But the essential thing that makes another person feel met by you, that quality of genuine contact, is gone. And people feel its absence immediately, even when they cannot name it. They walk away from the interaction feeling vaguely unsatisfied, like they spoke to a surface instead of a person, like something was being carefully controlled rather than openly shared. Presence comes back when you stop performing and start inhabiting, when you let your actual reactions land on your face instead of filtering them, when you allow a real thought to arrive before you speak, instead of reaching for the rehearsed version, when you care more about what is actually happening in front of you than about what the other person is concluding about you. The confidence that makes people stop and recalibrate, the kind that does not ask for permission and does not shrink under scrutiny, is never built from the outside. It emerges when the inside becomes somewhere. There is a moment in every interaction where power is silently negotiated. Most people never notice it happening. It lasts less than 3 seconds. It requires no words, and almost nobody is taught that it exists. But it sets the tone for everything that follows. It happens in the eyes, not in what you say with your eyes, not in some theatrical, intimidating stare you have practiced in a mirror, but in what you are willing to hold and what you instinctively break away from. That moment of contact and what you do inside of it tells the other person's nervous system everything it needs to know about where you stand relative to them. Most people break eye contact too soon, and they break it in a specific direction, down, not to the side, not because something genuinely caught their attention, but down. And that downward break is one of the oldest submission signals in primate behavior. Your nervous system already knows this. The person across from you already knows this. Not consciously, but in the part of them that has been reading social signals since before they had words for anything. When you drop your eyes first, you have communicated something. When you hold, you have communicated something entirely different. And the difference in how people treat you, respond to you, and think about you after the interaction is not small. Understand what is actually happening neurologically when two people make eye contact. Both nervous systems are live. Both are scanning. There is a reason sustained eye contact produces discomfort. It is activating. It raises physiological arousal in both people simultaneously. For the person who is not grounded, who is running low-level anxiety as their baseline state, that activation feels like threat, and they escape it. They look away. They smile to discharge the tension. They say something to fill the space, because the silence combined with the contact has become unbearable. But for the person whose nervous system is regulated, the person who has done the internal work to stay present under pressure, that same activation feels like aliveness. They do not need to escape it. And that difference, that willingness to remain inside the discomfort without flinching, without performing, without reaching for relief, that is what the other person feels landing on them like weight. Silence operates the same way. Most people treat silence like a problem that needs to be solved immediately. The moment a pause opens up in conversation, they rush to fill it with filler words, with unnecessary laughter, with a question they did not actually want to ask because silence feels exposing to them. It feels like the other person is evaluating them inside of it. And the evaluation might not go well, and that possibility is too threatening to sit with. So they talk, they keep talking, and every word they add to escape the silence is another signal that they are not in control of themselves. The person who can allow silence, who can ask a question and then simply wait, who can make a point and not immediately soften it with more words, who can sit inside the pause without visibly suffering, that person becomes the one the room unconsciously organizes itself around. The pausing before you speak deserves its own examination because most people have never been taught that the gap between stimulus and response is where your power lives. When someone says something to you, challenges you, questions you, tries to destabilize you, your instinct is to respond immediately. Speed feels like competence, but speed is often just anxiety wearing a confident mask. The person who pauses, who takes the full breath, who lets the question sit for a moment before answering it, that person is communicating something that no amount of fast talking ever could. They are communicating that they are not afraid of the moment, that they do not need to defend themselves in real time, that they have enough internal resources to slow. There is a mechanism running inside most people that they are completely unaware of, and it is quietly destroying their confidence every single day. It does not announce itself. It does not feel like weakness in the moment. In fact, it often feels like the socially intelligent thing to do, the considerate thing, the mature thing, the thing that keeps relationships smooth and interactions comfortable. It is the constant automatic checking of other people's faces to see if you are still okay. It is the split-second scan you run after you say something to see if it landed well. It is the slight adjustment you make to your opinion when you feel the room shifting against you. It is the approval loop. And once you understand what it is doing to you at a neurological and behavioral level, You will never be able to unsee it in yourself or in anyone around you. The approval loop begins early. It begins the first time a child realizes that certain behaviors produce warmth from the people they depend on and other behaviors produce withdrawal. That is not trauma. That is just development. But for most people, the wiring that was installed in childhood never gets updated. They carry it into adulthood, into professional environments, into relationships, into every room they enter. And what was once a survival mechanism, read the caregiver's face, adjust accordingly, maintain the connection, becomes a prison. Because you cannot be fully yourself and be constantly monitoring whether yourself is acceptable to others at the same time. Those two things are mutually exclusive. The bandwidth does not exist to do both. Watch what the approval loop does to your communication. You start a sentence with a strong position, and then feeling the other person's energy shift slightly, you begin to qualify it. You add, but I could be wrong, or that's just my opinion, or I don't know, maybe. Not because you have received new information that genuinely changed your view, but because you felt disapproval approaching and you moved to intercept it before it arrived. You preemptively softened yourself. And in doing so, you communicated something to the other person's nervous system that you absolutely did not intend to communicate. That your positions are negotiable based on their reaction. That your reality is subject to their approval. That you are at your core more afraid of their discomfort than committed to your own truth. This is why people who live inside the approval loop are paradoxically less likable, not more. Because what human beings are actually drawn to, at a level beneath social politeness and conscious preference, is someone who knows what they think and is not available to be talked out of it by social pressure alone. Not someone who is rigid or arrogant or closed to genuine persuasion, but someone whose internal compass does not spin wildly every time another person raises an eyebrow. That steadiness, that sense that this person's identity does not depend on your validation of it, is magnetic. It makes people trust you. It makes people want your opinion because they know your opinion is actually yours and not just a reflection of what they already believe. Killing the approval loop does not mean becoming indifferent to people. It does not mean bulldozing through social situations with no awareness of how you are affecting others. Emotional intelligence and approval seeking are not the same thing, and confusing them is one of the most common mistakes people make when they try to understand their own behavior. Emotional intelligence means you are aware of the emotional environment around you. Approval seeking means that environment has the power to alter who you are. One is a skill, the other is a leash, and you will never fully step into the version of yourself that makes people stop and recalibrate, the version that carries that quiet, unshakable gravity until you locate the leash, understand exactly how long you have been. Almost every piece of advice ever written about confidence tells you to change what you do. Stand differently, speak differently, make more eye contact, take up more space. And people try these things sometimes with genuine effort and real discipline. And for a while, some of it works. They hold their posture a little longer. They force themselves to pause before speaking. They practice the handshake. But then something happens, a high-pressure moment, a room full of unfamiliar people, a conversation that goes sideways, and everything they built collapses. They revert instantly, completely, as if none of the practice ever happened. And they walk away concluding that confidence just isn't something they are capable of, that they simply are not wired for it, that some people have it and they don't. But that conclusion is wrong. What actually happened is simpler and more important than they realize. They tried to change the output without changing the source. They worked on the behavior without touching the identity underneath it. Identity is not a concept. It is not a story you tell yourself in moments of reflection. It is a live operating system running beneath every decision you make, every reaction you have, every room you walk into. It is the answer your nervous system has already given to the question, who am I in this situation, before your conscious mind has even registered that the question was asked. And behavior flows from that answer automatically, the way water flows downhill. You do not decide to act like yourself. You just do, which means that if the identity running underneath says, I am someone who needs to be careful, who needs to be liked, who is not quite enough for this room, no amount of behavioral technique applied on top of that identity will hold for long. The foundation is wet. Whatever you build on it will eventually sink. This is why the most profound confidence transformations you will ever witness in a person do not look like gradual improvement. They look like a switch being flipped, because what changed was not a behavior, it was a self-concept. The person stopped identifying as someone who was working on confidence and started inhabiting the identity of someone who simply does not operate from that deficit. And the moment that internal shift happened, the behaviors followed without effort. The stillness arrived naturally. The eye contact stopped being a technique and started being an express.